We are just 9 days away from actual college football games that count being played on the field. And this is our 1-year anniversary of our first episode being released last year.
Is it really?
Yes, sir. So thank
that.
you guys for joining in on the ride the past year. We hope to make it many more. This is Always Talking Ball. If you're not already, make sure to follow us on all social media, all your streaming platforms, YouTube, etc. Make sure to subscribe. We are back with another Win Totals episode. We're finishing off conference preview season with the largest conference in the entire country, the Big Ten. We're going to talk Big Ten storylines, our favorite win totals, dark horses, and the big question, who are we going to pick for our conference championship game picks? Stay tuned to find out. As always, Lance Barton is here along with myself, Tyler Noe. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know you're sick of season preview talk, but you're not going to want to miss our next episode coming out next Monday. We are releasing the much-anticipated ATB preseason top 12, and we're doing something a little different this year. We're going to show you how each of us voted, and then we'll obviously have a consensus poll. We're also going to be giving out our college football playoff projections. I've seen both of them, and let's just say some words will be had. And don't forget, head over to homefieldapparel.com. They released some sick new hats this week, and we can get you 15% off. Use the promo code ATB15 at checkout. That's homefieldapparel.com. Promo code ATB15 for 15% off. Lance, let me ask you a question that you've asked me a couple times, and the answer may seem a little obvious, but out of the 4 newcomers in the Big Ten, who do you think is best positioned for long-term sustained success? You're probably going to say Oregon, so I might disallow that.
I mean, right now, in the way college football is in this new world of NIL, it's not really that new anymore, but it's still fairly new. But with the NIL world, I mean, Oregon is the one that can have the most sustained success as long as there are pretty much no rules and it's the wild, wild west, pun intended, that you're allowed to just pay players as much as you want, and whoever has the most money can go get the best players. Then Phil Knight and that Nike money out in Eugene, Oregon, they're going to be a wagon. When they have coaches like Dan Lanning who can already recruit his butt off, and then he has that NIL war chest to back him on top of that, it's just I don't know how you can't say that right now that isn't the team that's going to be able to sustain the most success over time. If USC,
I was going to say, would your next pick be either Washington or USC? Which one? Because I know you love some fishbowl.
I was going to say, I love me the fishbowl up there in Seattle, man. I do. What he did at Arizona was incredible. But, I mean, in the history of college football, it'd be hard not to say that the big university there that is in Southern California there in LA at USC, if that administration would get 100% like serious in this era about college football and throw extensive amount of resources like you see these SEC teams, et cetera, do. I know they've extended more resources at USC, but not to the extent that Oregon and Texas and teams like that USC is on the same level as, that they should be doing. I mean, Lincoln Riley is one of the best offensive coaches in the country, obviously. He went and hired DeAnton Lynn as his DC. But as far as the overall projection going forward, if they were to open up those wallets in the NIL world, I think USC could be one as well that could make a run like Oregon and be one of the bigger players in the Big Ten going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they're better positioned than Washington. They got the better market and everything. But, man, it's going to be an interesting year in the new look Big Ten. We're going to get into it here. I've got as many as 13 teams making a bowl from this league, which may seem like a lot. But, again, there's 18 teams in the league now.
Right.
And, they got to find, 84 bowl teams somehow. So I'm going to let you get us started off with your first win total for the Big Ten Conference this year. Give me something good.
All right. I am going to go a little off the radar here. I was hoping that people weren't going to start talking about them as much, but Kirk Herbstreit kind of stole our thunder on ESPN here recently when he broke his silence and did his normal, interviews on ESPN where he starts talking about the upcoming college football season. And he actually mentioned this team as a dark horse to make a run at the Big Ten championship. And that is Rutgers and old Greg Schiano with a win total of 6. I like Rutgers over this win total of 6. Now, here's the main reason why. This schedule. Rutgers does not play Oregon. They do not play Ohio State. They do not play Michigan. They do not play Penn State, and they do not play Iowa. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the top 6 odds-on favorites to win the Big Ten this year. They don't play any of those teams. In the non-conference, they play Howard and Akron, and yes, they do play at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, but that they can win that game in Blacksburg. It'll be a tough game, but again, Howard and Akron. And I like the roster that Schiano brings back. I mean, Schiano had a lot of success at Rutgers many years ago, and he's having success again at Sunge, the State University of New Jersey. Kyle Monungai, the running back at Rutgers, he led the Big Ten in rushing last year.
He's one of the best running backs in the country that no one really knows about.
Exactly. And I mean, they definitely fed him the rock too. And the fact that he was able to stay healthy, because they ran the ball 62% of the time last year, which was 8th nationally. And go ahead and say it for me, man. You know you're the one that pronounces it better. What's the QB's name again? How you say his last name?
Ethan Kaliakmanis.
From Minnesota, transfers in to Rutgers to be QB1 for Greg Schiano this year. I think they're going to run the rock again with Monungai. You know that's what they're going to do. They're going to lean on that run game and lean on that defense. Defense last year was top 50 nationally in all the major categories. Total D, scoring D, run defense, and pass defense. They were one of the few teams in the country that were top 50 in all of those statistical categories. And they return a large portion of that defense. So I'm going to take the Schiano men over 6. Like I said, I've told you that Howard, Akron, that's 2 wins. They get Washington at home in Piscataway. I think they can win that game, but let's just say that's a toss-up. They get UCLA at home. I think they're going to win that game. They get Illinois at home. I think they can win that game. And then they've got multiple toss-ups. Again, they don't play any of the top 10, any of the top 5 teams in the Big Ten. So I could see Rutgers getting to 7 or 8 wins with this schedule. So I'll take Rutgers over 6. I love it. It's on that whole number, by the way, of 6. Because I do think they're minimum going to get to a bowl game, so that means we push and don't lose anything on that.
Dude, it's crazy how aligned we are. They are literally the team I had first written down here. Rutgers over 6 at DraftKings.
And this is a great time to tell people we do not tell each other before these. We want them to be a surprise. So if we end up with a lot of the same teams, hey, that could be good for you guys. Could be bad. But usually when we match up, it's pretty good.
I get ticked when you steal my first team there, but I mean, Greg Schiano's done it again. Second time he's taken over Rutgers as a in the cellar of the Big Ten, whatever conference they're in, and brought them at least to the middle of the pack, which is for Rutgers is about as good as you can ask for. Again, Kyle Monungai, I mean, one of the best running backs in the country. They've got that experience offensive line for Kaliakmanis at quarterback. Again, the story is defense, mainly the secondary. Their secondary is legit. Easiest schedule in the conference, like you said. I'm with you for all those same reasons. It's the only thing that gives me a little pause is that Schiano's record in one-score games is 6-7 since he came back to Rutgers. They've got, according to K4, they've got 6 games between 40 and 60% win percentage, which they project to be one-score games. So he can get a couple of those, though. I believe in. I mean, Washington on a Friday night in Week 5. That's on a short week for Washington, flying all the way across country.
Hey man, instead of Pac-12 after dark, a little Piscataway after dark. That is a beautiful substitution for a Pac-12. That's almost like the going into the Palouse at Wazoo or going to old Reeser Stadium up there at Oregon State and the Beavs. A weird just Friday night game in Piscataway. Sign me up.
Dude, you want to talk about a weird game? Week 9, when they go to USC, that game kicks off at 11 p.m. Eastern time.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It is beautiful. It's right after a World Series game, right on Fox, Fox Friday Night Football. So, again, you mentioned a lot of games they can win: Minnesota, Illinois, UCLA, Wisconsin. I mean, they're going to be really good at home. So, I like it. Rutgers over 6. We're both in line there. I'm going to go to an easy one. We're just going to go ahead and put it out there. Iowa over 7.5 at Fanatics Sportsbook right now, guys. I've seen 8.5 at other sportsbook like Bet365 plus 150. 8.5 Iowa. Now, last we heard about the Hawkeyes was how bad Cade McNamara looked in the scrimmage. Okay, 7 for 21, couple picks. Okay, What did you guys expect? Of course, he's going to look a little rusty. I mean, it's a new knee. It's a new offense. Not to mention he's going against one of the best defenses in the country. Okay? Yep. That's what Iowa's defense is supposed to do to Cade McNamara. So you've talked a ton in the offseason about Tim Lester, his RPO-heavy offense. It's going to look nothing like they've ever seen at Kinnick Stadium before. The offensive line has experienced 150 starts. That defense, though, Cooper DeJean is gone. It doesn't matter. Second in returning production on the defensive side of the ball.
Two of the best linebackers in the country.
Yeah. And that's with losing their star defensive back. Again, we're going to look at the schedule. It's the third easiest schedule in the entire conference. They play Illinois State at home. They get Iowa State at home. They get Troy at home. Iowa State game is always fun, but they've kind of owned that series. I mean, even when Iowa State's had good years, Iowa always finds a way to beat them. Like,
love the name
12 to 10.
The Cyhawk series. Yeah. I love that name. This sounds cool.
They go to Minnesota, which I've said on the past, I'm not high on Minnesota this year, so who's not to say they can win that? Then they get a bye before their toughest game of the year, and the only game of the year they're going to be an underdog in, which is obviously at Ohio State. Now, Ohio State, on the other hand, they're coming off a road game at East Lansing. Michigan State probably going to be down this year. The very next week after playing Iowa, they're going to Oregon, okay? That is a sneaky look-ahead spot. Buckeyes are talented, no doubt about it. But, you're playing the Hawkeyes in week 6. You got a couple games under your belt. Like, Will Howard, new quarterback. Like, you go play against that defense anywhere. That's going to be tough. I mean, Ohio State's going to be favored by, probably 17 points.
I just don't think Iowa can score against the Jim Knowles defense, even if Iowa is improved on offense. It's going to be a lot of decent offense.
We'll find that out.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, Washington at home, at Michigan State, Northwestern at home, Wisconsin at home, UCLA on a Friday night, at Maryland. And then they get Nebraska at home on that Black Friday game. I mean, they're going to be favored in 11 games. And their win total is, you can find it at 7.5 if you want to pay a lot of juice, or 8.5 and take that plus money. So I'm going to have faith in Kirk Ferentz. He's kind of like our Mike Gundy of the Big Ten. He's won 10 games 3 of the past 5 years with offenses ranking in the 120s. So if they can just break the 100, the top 100 in offenses, think about the possibilities there in Iowa City.
Yeah, we talked about that on our SEC episode with LSU and their defense, or USC and their defense. If those two defenses can just improve a little bit, then they're obviously going to be much better and be able to win a lot more games. Iowa, same thing, obviously, offensively. So, all right, so you're going with Iowa over 7.5.
Yep.
All right. I am going to head and have a little conversation with one of our favorite coaches in all of college football, and that is Matt Rule and the Nebraska Cornhuskers with a win total of 7.5. I am, again, man, I'm going to buy the hype. I must be just a hype man. Multiple of these conferences, I am, like Ole Miss and the SEC, I'm buying the hype there. I'm buying the hype here with Nebraska in the Big Ten. We've seen and heard the stories about Matt Rule and his jumps in year 2 and year 3 at his previous stops at Temple and Baylor. He's a program builder. There's been some sound bites, man, coming out of some of their most recent scrimmage, and it was just incredible. Fantastic. I love what Nebraska is bringing back this year. Dude, this team lost 5 games last year by 1 possession, and 4 of those games were by a field goal. So they lost.
I think they've lost like 31 score games in the past 6 years, which is insane.
Right. Yeah, it really is. They've got to get over that hump, but I think they can get over it this year. Like I said, they lost 5 games, 5 one-score games last year, and they were 123rd in scoring offense, 117th in total offense. But they had a ton of injuries last year. They lost both of their running back 1 and running back 2 in the 3rd game of the year. Had some injuries on the offensive line, other injuries at the skill position. Almost the entire offense is back this year. They're 4 deep at tailback. Their skill position group is better than it's been in a long time. They went in the transfer portal and brought in Isaiah Nayer from Texas. He was very hyped up coming out of all places, Wyoming, when he went from Wyoming to Texas. And sorry.
Nelly.
Sorry, guys. Got a dog here that's just trying to chew up some toys. She wanted to interrupt the Nebraska speech here.
Yeah.
All right, where were we? Oh, yeah. Isaiah Nayer transferred in from Texas. Jamal Banks transferred in from Wake. There was a lot of people that were in on him and wanted him out of Wake. Malachi Coleman at receivers, a former five-star out of high school. And then they've got an absolute freak at tight end at 6'6", 250 pounds, runs a 4.5 40, and former number one tight end in the country, Tommy Fadone. He was the number one tight end in the country in the 2021 recruiting classes. Battled some injuries in his career, but he was healthier last year and had a really good season. He's back. And then they have, in my opinion, the strength of this team is going to be on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They bring back 5 offensive linemen that have all played at least 4 years in college football. And they bring back 8 starters on the defense, on Tony White's defense, and the black shirts were finally back last year because they bring 8 starters back from a top 20 unit from last year. They were 7th in the country last year in yards per play and 6th in the nation in rushing yards and yards per carry on defense. So, and again, I look at this schedule. We've already talked about it a lot. I think there is a great chance that they could start 7-0. They're going to be favored in all 7 of these games as well. Depending on how well Kurt Signetti looks, that game Saturday, October the 19th in Bloomington could be a game that there might be a slight dog in. But as of right now, all we can go off of is what we have right now. They're going to be favored against UTEP at home, Colorado at home, Northern Iowa at home, Illinois at home, at Purdue, Rutgers at home, and at Indiana. So I think they start 7-0 before they head to Ohio State. They're not winning there. Then they get UCLA at home. That's 8 wins. They play at USC in the Coliseum. That is going to be a toss-up game. They can win in the Coliseum against USC. They get Wisconsin at home, and then they have that war at the end of the year in their rivalry game against at Iowa. So I've got Nebraska going 8-4.
Who has a better chance of winning at Columbus, Nebraska or Iowa?
I'd probably say Nebraska. It's tough. I just think that at least Nebraska has – we don't know what Raiola is going to look like.
Yeah.
But if he is as talented as what we think, I know he's a freshman, but we've seen some freshman quarterbacks look good in college football. If he is going to be good, and some of the athletes they've got on the perimeter that I just talked about, again, I don't think they've got a shot at all to win in Columbus. But, I mean, I think if you're answering that question, I would say Nebraska.
Okay.
So I like Nebraska over 7.5.
It's going to be just Lance talking the last half of this episode because he just took another one of mine. Nebraska over 7.5 for all the same reasons. I mean, it bears repeating. Matt Rule in second years at previous stops, he had a 4-win improvement at Temple and a 6-win improvement at Baylor. They went 5-7 last year, and they're only calling for like a 2.5-win improvement, which is kind of crazy. Again, you mentioned the offensive woes. I mean, the turnover margin, we've touched on that, minus 17. No team lost more interceptions and fumbles than last year than the Huskers. Mm-hmm. You talked about the offensive line, the entire 2 deep of the offensive line returns, so they have depth there too. They still got to be improved on what they did last year, but I think obviously with one more year under the belt in the same system and everything, that helps. Defense is still going to be solid. Yeah, the 6th easiest schedule, very manageable non-conference. I'm with you on the 7-0 start. That Indiana game could be a look-ahead spot, possibly, looking ahead to a Saturday night showdown or whatever it might be, or maybe big noon kickoff at Ohio State the next week. Because if they're 6-0 those first games, I mean, Nebraska's probably going to be ranked in the top 25, and there's going to be a lot of hype building towards that Ohio State game, but you don't want to overlook Sigs. All right, so but yeah, I'm thinking they could win. I mean, 7-1 after Ohio State, 8-1, 8-2. I mean, 9-3 isn't out of the question. 8-4, and that still gets you over the 7.5. So again, we are aligned there. I'm going to go 50 minutes up the road from my house to West Lafayette, Indiana, and I'm going to talk about the Purdue Boilermakers.
Boiler up.
Who they have a win total of 4.5 this year. They lost a couple of key. I mean, they got a lot of guys in the transfer portal, but they lost a couple of key pieces. We've talked about them a lot at A&M. Nick Scorton, Deion Burks going to Oklahoma. That's a tough loss. I know they've got an experienced quarterback in Hudson Card, but man, they were handed the 2nd toughest schedule in the conference and the 11th toughest schedule in the country. And this is purely a schedule pick on a over under win total of 4.5. I'm taking the under. If I didn't say it at the beginning, they got Indiana State at the beginning of the season. Okay, they should win that. And then they strangely get a bye week 2. So they with the whole structure of FBS schedule this year, every team gets 2 byes. Next year, it's not going to be like that. They get 2 byes, so they take one in week 2. So they're going to have stretches where they play 6 straight games and then 5 straight games. And right after their bye, they're hosting Notre Dame as part of their non-conference schedule. And right after Notre Dame, they head out to the aforementioned Reser Stadium and play the Mountain West quasi Oregon State Beavers in a place that's never easy to win, and it's not going to be easy for Purdue to win out there.
And I want to point out on that one before you go, I want to point out Oregon State getting a Big Ten team on their home field. You've got to know that they are going to be pissed off by being left like they were and left for dead, and all those teams that went to the Big Ten.
Oh yeah,
I mean, I know that their roster is a little was absolutely just ravaged to the transfer portal, but still, I think Oregon State, that is going to be a brutal, brutal place to play for Purdue in that spot.
Yeah. So after that, we talked about Nebraska. They host Nebraska. They've got back-to-back road games, Wisconsin, Illinois. Then they get Oregon at home. They're the only team, I think, in the conference that plays Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State on the schedule. So they're going to have to, in order to beat us on the 4.5, they got to win Indiana State, right? So that's one win. They've got to win. I mean, they've got to win toss-up games at Illinois, Northwestern at home, at Michigan State, at IU. I mean, those are kind of their toss-up games right now. Everything else, that Nebraska game, I mean, it would be nice if they could pull that one, for the over-betters. But 4.5 is just entirely too high for Purdue this year. And I just, I think that's a fairly easy bet in my mind.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not going to launch off into it. I just think the schedule. I do like Hudson Card. I think they've got some solid receivers, etc. But the only comment I'll make on this team, Graham Harrell, the offensive coordinator. I mean, I don't know how this dude just continues to get OC jobs. Everywhere he's been, they haven't.
He shows him his highlight tape.
Yeah, I mean, they just sling
his personal highlight tape.
Exactly, his personal highlight tape. Slinging the rock to Michael Crabtree down there in Lubbock. But yeah, I'm with you. Purdue under 4.5, and I think it's just mostly schedule. Yeah, their roster, like you said, their best players did get taken from the transfer portal. But I think that's a solid bet too. So I'm with you on Purdue under 4.5. The next one I'm going to go is I'm going to hop in a boat and I'm going to row a boat with the Gophers in Minnesota. Old PJ Fleck in Minnesota has a win total of 5.5, and I'm going to take the over here. This was one that I'm kind of stepping out a little bit on, and here's the reason why. Last year was an outlier in PJ Fleck's coaching career at Minnesota. People can hate his antics, think he's hokey, whatever. Like, he's got a lot of like Dabo Sweeney in him as far as even more hokier than Dabo. But the dude has won football games everywhere he's been until last year. Before last year, his Gopher teams in the previous 4 seasons, they went 9-4, 9-4, 11-2, and 7-6. You know what all 4 of those are? Well over 5.5. So again, last year was an outlier, and they were another one. Had many injuries. So I think this is a perfect buy low, the old stock trick, buy low on Minnesota. Max Brosmer, we've talked about him quite a bit. He led the FCS in passing last year at New Hampshire with almost 4,000 yards passing. He transferred to Minnesota, and he's going to be the new quarterback. Darius Taylor, running back last year, had almost 800 yards rushing in just 5 games before he went down to injury. He's back. And then they brought in, forgive me if I butcher this name, but Cy Bangura, the All-MAC, was an All-MAC running back at Ohio U. He ran for 19 touchdowns and almost 1,800 yards the last 2 years for the Bobcats at Ohio U. And then strength of the team is going to be up front on both sides of the ball. They've got 4 starters back on the offensive line. On the defensive side of the ball, they lost their starter offensive coordinator, Joe Rossi, to Michigan State, but I love the hire that they made as a defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman. He was an FCS assistant coach of the year at James Madison a couple of years ago, and then he parlayed that into being like a co-defensive coordinator basically at Rutgers. And he was on that defensive staff last year at Rutgers that helped them to be a top 50 stop unit. And they return almost their entire two deep on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm betting more just on PJ Fleck and his history of winning more than 5.5 games, which is what this win total is at 5.5. On the schedule, I think if they win game one right out of the gate on Thursday night against North Carolina in Minnesota at home, I think if they win that game, I feel pretty good, and barring a bunch of injuries, that they're going to cash this win total. And the last I saw, that game was around a pick 'em. So they play Rhode Island at home, they play Nevada at home, they play Iowa at home. They can win all four of those games. They also could be 2-2 after that. But still, they get games against UCLA, they get games against Illinois. They play against Rutgers. You mentioned a minute ago, like one-score games. A lot of these games are going to be like those old Big Ten West rock fights where it's 17-14, 13-10, or 23-20 type games. They lost those types of games last year. I think they'd flip it around and turn it around this year, and I like the Gophers and row the boat with PJ Fleck to get over 5.5 wins.
Yeah, they were on my short list. I liked the over. I looked at the schedule a little more. I do like them in that first game against North Carolina, but I mean, yeah, I see 5 or 6 likely losses. I mean, Iowa at Michigan, USC, Penn State at home, at Wisconsin in the year. It just kind of gave me a little pause there. But
yeah, man, there's a lot of these teams when I'm studying this and looking at these schedules, probably more so than any other conference that we've looked at so far, that I could take I felt like 6 or 7 teams and put them in a hat. And you can just, if you looked at probably look ahead lines on some of these games, they're extremely like low, close lines. Yeah. I looked at a few of them on DraftKings, and it was amazing how close a lot of the lines were between a lot of these teams. So, like you said, they're going to be toss-up, one-score games.
All right, I've got one team left, so I'm going to let you do another one real quick, and then I'll do my last one.
I hope I don't steal it from you. So
if you do, I'll take over talking.
Okay. I've got Penn State over 9.5.
Okay.
Is that yours?
Nope.
All right. I'm going to take.
I would never bet my money on James Franklin again.
Well, hey man, he's not having to play Ohio State and Michigan this year like he normally does. Yeah. He only plays Ohio State. He doesn't play Michigan, and Penn State doesn't play Oregon. I love the schedule, but I also love this Penn State team this year. I do.
People are not sold on Drew Aller.
They're not. We've got some crap from people on the quarterback list that we released, and I'm sorry, we released our top 12 quarterbacks going into this season, and we didn't have Drew Aller on that list. Now, he could be on the most important list, which is at the end of this year. Drew Aller could be. With the talent that he has, a former 5-star coming out of high school with new OC Andy Kotelnicki and his track record of what he's done at Buffalo, what he did at Wisconsin Whitewater, and what he's done at Kansas under Lance Leipold. It's amazing when you go look at – I task people to go please. Just look at Andy Kotelnicki. Look him up on Google and look at his bio. The dude has done incredible things everywhere he's been. It's remarkable, especially at running the football and explosive plays in the passing game, which what does Penn State do really well? They run the football with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. So he's got 2 of the best backs that he's ever had to be able to coach with that group. They're going to have a solid offensive line like they always do. And now he's got a 5-star talent at quarterback, and that's what they're trying to unlock with Drew Aller is the downfield explosive pass game. So a little nugget here. I mentioned this previously. I'll mention it again. That the last time that James Franklin replaced both of his coordinators was in 2016, and they won the Big Ten championship game that year. So Andy Kotelnicki's the new OC, and former Indiana head coach Tom Allen is the new defensive coordinator taking over from Manny Diaz. And this is the year that Penn State has been shooting for. If you go back and look at that recruiting class, the 2021 recruiting class, 5-star Drew Aller was in that class. Nick Singleton and Katron Allen both were in that class. Abdul Carter, their freak defensive end edge rusher, was in that class. They're all now together in their 3rd year, played a lot of football, and there's others just besides them. They brought in a really good wide receiver and a former 5-star talent himself, at Julian Fleming from Ohio State, to try to help on that perimeter at the receiver position. So, how honestly, Penn State over 9.5 is one of my, if not my, favorite win total of all of these Power Four conferences that we've given out. I could see 11-1, but I'm going to be conservative here and say they go 10-2. They've got a tough game right out of the gate. We've talked about it. There at Old Country Roads, Take Me Home at West Virginia on Saturday, August the 31st. Again, when games are played in the day do matter. That game being played at noon is, instead of at night, I think really is a big deal. I think they win that game at West Virginia, but that is going to be a dogfight in Morgantown. They get Bowling Green, Kent State. Those are wins. Illinois win. UCLA at home win. At USC and at Wisconsin back-to-back weeks, but they get a bye week in between the USC and Wisconsin game. So I like the fact that Franklin gets a bye before he heads to Camp Randall. Obviously, the game at home against Ohio State. That is the only game on this schedule that I see that is just, I don't know if they can win. But here's the thing. They're talented enough, and Happy Valley is a tough enough place that if Andy Kotelnicki can unlock the talent of Drew Allard, that 5-star talent, they can beat Ohio State in Happy Valley. Don't know that they will. Right now, until they can prove it to me, I'm not going to say they can. But say I've got Penn State going 10-2 or 11-1, so that's over the 9.5 win total. So I'll take Penn State over 9.5.
Yeah, fourth easiest schedule in the conference. Mm-hmm. And Kelly Ford has them at a 71% chance to win at least 10 games. So I think you seem to be on the right side there. So my last pick, my last win total of the season previews, as I was filling out my, picking games and everything, I only had one team out of all P4 conferences that I had going 12-0 in the regular season. And so this is an easy pick for me. I'm taking the over 10.5 on the Oregon Ducks.
I came close to doing it.
I think this might be the best Dan Lanning-led Oregon team he's had, and that's including last year's team, who was basically 6 points away from being undefeated, right? He doesn't have to play Kalen DeBoer anymore, so that's great for Dan Lanning until the playoff. They have an incredible offensive line, incredible pass catchers. They've got Dylan Gabriel, who transferred in. I mean, he's just, Heisman favorite, no big deal. Look at this stat. Ajani Cornelius and Josh Connerly Jr. are two tackles that they've got on their offensive line. In nearly 900 pass blocking snaps combined, they allowed a single sack and just 3 quarterback hits all year last year. 900 snaps. I mean, it's just an embarrassment of riches. We've seen what he's done in the transfer portal, just building depth. And he's been doing it for a while since he's known that they're going to be moving conferences. Top 10 defense, Kobe Savage, Jabbar Muhammad in the secondary, Jordan Birch leading the way up front. No need to get into all of the names all over this roster. Second easiest schedule in the conference. They do face, road trips in November to Michigan and to Wisconsin. We kind of wanted to see some of those West Coast teams, like especially like a USC play Iowa, like November 23rd. It's
going to be so much fun seeing the Ducks in the Big House and in Camp Randall in November. That's awesome, man.
But again, Oregon, I mean, they get snow and it gets cold. So, it's not like Southern California. Yeah. I would have rather seen USC versus Iowa in Kinnick Stadium. But, beggars can't be choosers. But they get a big game. I mean, I guess it's a big game, but it's a big game in week 2. Boise State, the G5 favorite, to get that automatic spot, playing Oregon. Oregon probably shouldn't have any trouble with that one. The Civil War is taking place week 3 this year instead of the last week. But again, we talked about Oregon State. Just, they got ravaged in the transfer portal.
UCLA, there's too much.
Yeah, UCLA, Michigan State. The good thing for them is, like I said, Ohio State plays Iowa the week before they go to Oregon to play Oregon. Oregon plays Michigan State at home on a Friday night. They're going to get an extra day to prepare, extra day to recover to play Ohio State. I think they beat Ohio State in the regular season. I really do. I just think Ohio State is, top 3 team, top 4 team in the country, but Autzen a different stadium, man. And I know they played in the Big House and they played in, Happy Valley, and they've done all this stuff. They played at Notre Dame last year, but Austin Stadium gets loud, and Oregon's a talented team.
Yeah,
After that,
that's easily one of the games of the year.
oh
Easily.
yeah, for sure. And I believe that's October 12th, right? Where everybody's playing on October 12th. Red River's that day. I think Ole Miss LSU's that day. So October 12th is going to be a heck of a day. After Ohio State, Purdue, and Illinois, then they go to Michigan. Okay, we don't know what Michigan's going to be like. If Michigan, was within, 3 points in the spread in that game, that means Michigan's really good. And that means Alex Orji has worked out. That means the defense is as good as they were last year. So we just don't know much about Michigan right now. Maryland at home at Wisconsin, then finishing up in the border war against Washington. I think Oregon's got a really good shot at going 12-0. If they do slip up against Ohio State or Michigan, you're still getting 11-1. Probably still in the Big Ten championship game. You're for sure in the playoff. And most importantly for us, you've cashed that over 10.5.
Yeah, man. So out of all of there's only a few teams that have a win total of that high of 10.5. Is that the only one that we've taken that's either one of us has taken so far that's over 10.5 of the 4 conferences? I believe it is, isn't it?
I believe so.
Because I don't think we took Georgia. We took under on Texas.
We haven't talked about Notre Dame.
That's true. That's true.
They never fit in anywhere. We don't know if we would put them in the ACC since that's their basketball conference, or if we should put them in the Big Ten since that's their geographical conference.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Do you want to call your shot yet and say you got Notre Dame over 10.5? You want to call it?
I wouldn't bet that. I wouldn't bet it at all.
Okay. All right. The pessimism of the fan coming out of you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's not a bad bet, dude. I mean, you look at it. I mean, the only game they're not favored in currently, but some books may actually, I haven't looked at it, but some books may have Oregon like a 1 point or a half, whatever, around a pick 'em against the Buckeyes in Eugene. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think it is pick 'em right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
Kelly Ford's got him at 59% chance to win that game, and you know how much we trust K Ford. So
right. Yeah. So that's not a bad pick there, dude.
Yeah.
They're loaded this year, no doubt about it. So again, man, I hate taking unders but here we're trying to win money for you guys. All right, that's what we're trying to do here. I don't like being negative in the off season. Everybody's positive going into the season, but I can't find a whole lot of positives about the old UCLA Bruins. I just can't. I know everybody likes to make fun of that new coach, what he did there, the Big Ten Media Days. That was incredible. I like how he leaned into it, though, with the T-shirts, with the We're in L.A. Shirts. That was pretty cool. But this is one of those that the win total has gone from like around 6.5, and it's dropped all the way down to 5 and 4.5. So I'm chasing a number here, but that's fine. I don't run a whole lot anymore, but I will chase after this number here and take UCLA under 5. I think that's a fair number. There's multiple 5s out there. They got to get to a bowl game to beat me. And I'm looking at this schedule, guys. They play at LSU. They play Oregon. They play at Penn State. They play at Nebraska. They got to go all the way across country to Piscataway and play the Shiano men and Sunge and Rutgers. They've got to play Iowa. They've got to play at Washington. They've got to play USC. I don't think they beat any of those teams.
You didn't even mention LSU.
Oh, I did. I said they play. Okay. They play at LSU. Yeah. I don't think they beat any of those teams. I've got UCLA going 3-9. So I feel like I've got a 2-game cushion here. This was one of those that I had to stare at a little bit and like, what am I missing here? They lost a ton of talent after we all know the Chip Kelly thing. Chip Kelly left late, kind of left UCLA in a tough situation. Their all-star defensive coordinator that was just incredible last year, DeAnton Lynn, he just went, right down the street to USC. So, yeah, man, I just think that UCLA has to get to a bowl game to beat me. I like that it's on the whole number of 5 because if they do happen to win a couple more games that I don't think they're going to win, because there are a couple of toss-up games would be against Indiana, against Minnesota, and I'm going to say a toss-up game's Fresno State. Like, Fresno State's not a joke. And they play them last game of the year. Like, what's that team? What's UCLA going to be like if they're sitting there with only 3 wins on the year? They get waxed by their arch rival USC, and then they've got to play Fresno State last game of the year with like nothing to play for. So I've got UCLA under 5.
Yeah, all I'll say about them is I think it's a sneaky week 1 game. They got to fly to Hawaii. They got to play Timmy Chang and his run and shoot offense. Hawaii they've had a rough couple years, but I mean, that's not an outright pick. If you can get, 14.5 with Hawaii, take a look at that. But I'm not touching UCLA this year. I got to see what Deshaun Foster does and
Yeah.
just kind of see what they look like post Chip Kelly.
Okay.
You got another one for us?
I just got to ask you, man.
Yeah.
I mean, they're your hoop squad. Old Sigs.
Yep.
Oh, Kurt Signetti. There's been more talk of Indiana football this offseason than anything we've ever, any time that I can remember. I mean, Andy Staples was even talking about a ton here recently in Indiana. You don't think Indiana can get over that 5.5?
He's bold, man. He's bold. He's not afraid.
Never had a losing season.
Never had a losing season. He's not afraid to speak his mind. Obviously, he's like a press conference king right now.
Yeah.
When he got to media days, he said it's good that they came up here because they'll know where to be because they're going to be in the Big Ten championship game. And, he's not afraid to show his confidence. And, yeah, if you've never had a losing season, I don't know why you would shy away from that. He's trying to get guys to come to IU. I mean, they're trying to sway me. I've never been a big IU football fan, but they're trying to turn me. And the news out this week is Juju Lewis, who is a USC commit quarterback, 5-star. Tom Lloyd thinks that IU might be the favorite for him, and you've never heard that before in your life. So 5.5 wins in his first year with a lot of turnover, a lot of G5 guys. Even though JMU is familiar with the system, they're coming in. It's can they make a bowl or not?
Yeah, I'm not trying to cop out here, but I can't say yet that I would put my hard-earned money on them yet. At 5.5, this might be one that makes that all-encompassing graphic that you're so good at making. You may be really mad at me if I try to add them to the graphics. That's more work that has to be created there. But stay tuned. I may take a shot at the Hoosiers over 5.5, but right now that's just a lean. That's my first lean of these. I had multiple last year, but this is my first lean.
Gotta love the leans.
Gotta love a lean, dude. Well, you got any more?
I don't have any more. Do you have any more?
I don't, man. I don't. I was thinking about a couple, but I'm gonna stay off of them. And who you got as a dark horse, man?
Yep, dark horse pick time. I think I picked this same team last year, and I got to roll with them again. And they're the team that I see could win 11 games. That's Iowa Hawkeyes. At FanDuel, you can find them at plus 4,000 to win the Big Ten. I didn't find a number on them to just make the title game. This is a long shot dark horse because I'll go ahead and say my championship game picks Oregon versus Ohio State. I think that's kind of like your SEC, Georgia, Alabama.
Yeah,
kind of these SEC and Big Ten for the Power 2 that they're being called. They have a chance to be really boring, boring in quotes, championship game matchups because. We'll have already seen Oregon, Ohio State. We've seen Georgia, Bama a ton, and you kind of want some new blood in there sometimes. But when you're separating yourself from the rest of the pack like this, I just think why not pick that? But yeah, I think Iowa. I mean, if they win with that schedule, if they only got one loss to Ohio State and they win 11 games, that's the problem. If Ohio State only loses to Oregon, Ohio State, if they do a head-to-head tiebreaker in the Big Ten, they've got the head-to-head over Iowa. They're not going to make the Big Ten championship game. So I think Iowa, I'm not going to throw money on it, but I mean, it's a long shot for a reason. So yeah.
Yep. Well, again, we don't know what tiebreakers are. We'll say that again. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here. It's just amazing that in the today's sports betting world that we don't know what you can bet like futures on conference winners that we don't even know what the freaking tiebreakers are.
Yeah.
Maddening. But I'm going to take a shot at the team that's listed right below Iowa in the odds. Iowa's plus 4,000 on FanDuel to win the Big Ten, which is obviously a huge long shot. I'm going to take a shot at a dark horse here that if I have to take one, I'm going to take a shot at Nebraska at plus 5,000. And again, that's just when we looked at their schedule a minute ago. The only game on their schedule that is a right now guaranteed loss is at Ohio State. But again, UCLA, USC, Wisconsin, Iowa, Rutgers, Purdue, Illinois, Northern Iowa, Colorado, UTEP. None of those right now, if you sit here today, that you would say, oh, Nebraska can't win that game. Because again, they don't play Oregon. They don't play Michigan. They don't play Penn State. So I think that Nebraska at plus 5,000 is worth a little bit of a look if you want to just sprinkle a few dollars on that. So I think that those are, again, dark horses or teams that are outside the top 4 odds on favorites.
Yep.
So we've got some true dark horses at plus 4,000 and plus 5,000.
Yeah. Like I said, my championship game pick is Oregon versus Ohio State. And I think the Buckeyes get revenge in Lucas Oil Stadium on December 7th. And I think they beat Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. And obviously, both those teams, I think they would be 12-1 at that point, is my forecast. And you'll see both of them in the playoffs, but that's not until next Monday, when we reveal our playoff projections. But who do you got in the championship game?
I'll be boring. I'm just going to follow suit there. Be chalk. Just like, again, I was chalk in the SEC, and when we chalk here, Ohio State and Oregon are ranked, whatever they're ranked, they're odds-on favorites, etc., for a reason. I came close to taking a look at Penn State here. I really did. I just can't say that James Franklin and Penn State are going to beat Ohio State right now. I just can't.
Well, yeah, again, that's the tiebreaker. If we are assuming head-to-head is the tiebreaker, that's it right there. So it's unfortunate that, maybe they should have played Michigan this year instead of Ohio State, and who knows what would have been in the tiebreaker.
Yeah, so I've got the Buckeyes playing Oregon, and I've got Ohio State winning the Big Ten championship, and they're either going to be the number 1 or number 2 seed in the CFP.
Well, yeah, okay. That's it for the win totals episodes. Like last year, this was fun. We will tweet out and post on social media our win totals episodes sometime next week. Again, I teased the episode on Monday. You're not going to want to miss college football playoff projections, preseason rankings from us. We're kind of waiting until we get a lot more information to put those out. But again, we have rough drafts, and I've seen them, and it's very interesting. So again, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Follow us on Spotify and Apple. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on those social medias, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to throw one more thing in here. If you are a fan, which obviously you are, if you're listening to this podcast of college football, seriously, you need to go follow us on Instagram. My boy Tyler here is throwing out some really good memes here lately and some solid reels, etc., that are really starting to take off. And obviously some college football fans are enjoying it. Hey, we're huge fans just like you guys are. And our content is definitely related to the love of this freaking sport. We have a lot of fun with it. We throw some jokes in there, etc. So yeah, go check us out on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We have a Facebook. We don't interact as much on Facebook. It's mostly Instagram, TikTok, and X. So go check us out on there.
We appreciate you guys, and we will see you next week.